We'll call the meeting to order, folks. 1 p.m, so it's time to kick off. So welcome everybody to today's policy and planning meeting. Seems every computer in the room's updating. They're not. So do we have any apologies? No apologies. Fantastic. And we don't have a public forum, as far as I'm aware. Okay, so if there are any items in here, I'm dealing with conflict of interest. Any items that people want to declare, either do so now or when we get to the item involved. And I will remember to look at the screen occasionally for those online. So welcome everyone online. We've got, what, 4? There's been no change to order of business, as far as I'm aware. Carol, we've got no change to order of business?
No.
Okay, right, fine. So we're dealing with the minutes, and we're starting on page 6. So if there's any corrections or modifications that we need, please signal. So I'll just go through page 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and finally page 12. Any corrections from anybody? Would appear not. Would someone like to move? Thank you. Thank you, Nigel. And a seconder. Thank you, Warren. So those in favour say aye, and against, carried. Thank you. Right. Follow-up items from the previous meeting, and they are on page 14, or 13 and 14. Right, so we have an attachment. So, anybody got any queries? And we're looking at the table on page 14, folks. Yes, certainly.
Anna, do we go for a second to last point regarding the disposal of surplus land?
Let's get this loaded up and I'll be with you.
Oh, we can go to...
The next one, which was Carol on traffic and parking bylaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just an update on this one. So we have a program of policies and bylaws that George reviews. This one wasn't on there, and a couple of others creeped in during the year. So what we're proposing is, because this one is next on the list, that we will get a meeting with Councillor Belsham and the Chief Executive with George either this side of Christmas or early into January, and then progress this one. So while it says it was due to be done in 2021, it will be in the first part of 2022.
Thank you, Carol. Got any questions? Fee?
On another matter though. Yes.
Oh. So, any questions on that matter that we've just been briefed on? Okay, your question.
So it's just around the Swim for All program, and I'm really just wondering, my understanding is that that's not currently available in Hunterville. Is that something that could be available in Hunterville or not? Is my question.
Kaylee?
Are you able to speak to that one, please? Absolutely. So there's several aspects of the Swim For All program. There's the waiving of the entry into the pool. Mm-hmm. So that would need to be a discussion, I imagine, with the trust that runs the pool as to whether they will do that. And then it's really about the transport to the school. So forgive me for not understanding.
So they all just walk, so that's not an issue, yeah.
So the only other those are the two aspects really of the Swim For All program.
Right.
And you might be able to enlighten me on what the entry fees are like, or what that structure is like there, and who.
Yeah, so it's like it's just collected well, sorry, the school pays a one-off fee currently.
And so would your request be that council cover that waiver, or that the pool doesn't charge the school?
What I'm wondering is if it's externally funded.
Right, so the external funding is only to subsidise the transport to the pool. So if the children are already walking to the school.
Yeah, that's not an issue. Thank you, I think that clarifies it, so it would have to be a council subsidy, yeah.
Now, who's next?
Sorry, I was going to ask, aren't I, to talk on the second to last bullet point, just regarding on the item on the future council agenda. And I've asked them, it will be best to bring it to full, where this actual point is talking about is on a future council, which will be next week.
Thank you. Okay, if we just, so we dealt with swim pool at the top. Have we got any other questions on any other closed or in progress work? The only one we haven't commented on is the draft volunteer procedures. Mrs. Grant, there we go.
Hi everyone, so that has been developed and it will be presented as part of my health and safety report at the Audit and Risk Committee next week.
Brilliant, thank you. Right, unless we've got any other queries, we got any queries online? Joe? You're still muted, Jill.
Just sorry, it's not a question. It's just to say that the sound seems particularly bad. It was good this morning, but I just it's not picking up and it's quite fuzzy.
Thank you. So possibly when we're addressing the floor, could the speakers just speak quite clearly? How am I coming through now, Jill? Just give me a thumbs up if it's okay. Okay, audio. Okay, so would someone like to move that the follow-up action items report be received? I'll move from the chair and a seconder. Councillor Wilson, thank you very much. Those in favour say aye, and against, carried. Right, my chair's report is, it's in a separate document that you will have received electronically, and there's also a paper copy on the table, I believe. Yeah. So look, I'll just take it as read, assuming you've all had time. But basically, I've briefed over the submissions for the Easter Trading Bylaw, the freedom camping issues, the banking industry's performance submission that His Worship has done to Parliament, and the Welcoming Communities Program. So I will move that report is received, and if I could have a seconder from someone. Thank you, Nigel. Councillor Belton. And does anybody have any questions? Otherwise, we can move on. None from online. Thanks, folks. Okay, item 9. Reports for decision. So we've got, first of all, the Welcoming Communities update. So we've got both Ali and Nadia. Who's leading on this, Nadia? Ali? Well, welcome to the table. Welcome to Policy and Planning. Ali? So floor is yours.
Right, hello, good afternoon everyone. It's my pleasure to join you. For the most part, I'd like to take the report as read, but I have a little bit of extra information and highlight a couple of points, and I hope you'll excuse me for reading from my notes so that I don't overlook anything. The first point is that unintentionally omitted from the report is, and how we've mentioned in some previous reports, is the external funding for the Welcoming Communities Program, which comes from the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment via Immigration New Zealand, and that's $50,000 per year for 3 years. And this contributes towards wages, activities, and the development and delivery of the Welcoming Plan, which is mentioned in the report. We've also very recently accepted an additional one-off grant of $10,000 from the National Manager of Refugee and Migrant Support for Immigration New Zealand, Andrew Lockhart, which can be used for 2 Welcoming Plan events that support migrant participation. I should note that this means we need to go through the stock take process and the and finalise our welcoming plan that I've mentioned in the report before deciding how to spend those funds. We have until 2023 sometime to spend those. I'd like to draw your attention to the unique nature of the welcoming plan, in that it is a plan developed by the community and ultimately owned by the community, as opposed to a plan owned by council that we normally deal with. This isn't the sort of inherent nature of welcoming communities, and my role, and indeed council's role in the whole process, is as facilitator. It may eventuate that there will be actions on the welcoming plan that are led by us or undertaken by us that we own, but there will also be a number of actions led by other organisations and owned by other organisations. So it's really a community plan. So I just wanted to sort of bring that to everyone's attention. And then in terms of the report, in item 3.3, you'll note the 8 outcome areas of the Welcoming Communities Standard. These are the foundations of welcoming communities for New Zealand that all participating councils work towards. Consider them the sort of a non-negotiables, you could say, or the aims. And you'll note that they're quite broad and they touch almost every aspect of the community and council's work, so quite a high standard to meet, but this is why the stocktake process and the development of the welcoming plan process will involve extensive collaboration across council staff and across the community. And from item 3.5 to 3.7, the report talks about the accreditation stages of welcoming communities. The first of which we've actually done most of already to achieve the first level of accreditation, and the final thing is to make a formal statement of commitment to the community that we are striving to become a welcoming community in Rangitike. And so the report seeks a recommendation from the committee as to who will sign that statement if you wish to proceed with a statement of commitment. As a minimum requirement to meet the accreditation, the statement of commitment would need to be signed by the Mayor, His Worship, and the Chief Executive. However, some councils have opted to have a larger group of councillors and iwi committee members sign that statement of commitment to show a unified and strengthened commitment to the community. So my report is seeking guidance from you, the committee, as to your preference to that statement of commitment, with a draft recommendation for your consideration. And that concludes my comments. And other than that, I'm happy to take questions from anyone.
So who would like to be first? Dave.
I'll jump in. So you mentioned other councils have signed up. How far through the process are these other councils, or is this a new initiative that all councils are at basically the starting point now?
No, so there was a pilot program of welcoming communities run starting in 2017. Excuse me if I haven't got that year exactly correct. And I think there were 8 or 9 councils in that pilot phase. And then we're sort of part of phase 2 and bringing it up to there are now 16 councils across the country participating. And the welcoming communities idea is actually a global concept that a lot of other countries participate in, whether they call it welcoming communities or welcoming cities or welcoming villages. So Immigration New Zealand has picked up this concept and collaborated with a number of other countries to kind of bring it to being, and then worked with a number of councils to develop the welcoming standard for New Zealand.
Question, if I may, Chair. So have you referenced back to those other people, if it was 2017, 2018, they would be fairly well entrenched in the program. Have you referenced back to them as to what the outcomes have been, and have they achieved the deliverables that they initially thought they were going to achieve? Have we actually gone back and said, well, how's it gone for you, and what has it done,
Sure.
and what have the outcomes been?
So Immigration New Zealand has led the sort of process to have that pilot program, and they've produced a report sort of showing the success of the first stages. I'm in contact with all of the other participating councils. They've all got a welcoming communities coordinator or a community engagement advisor taking care of welcoming communities. So I've read all of their welcoming plans. I haven't in detail asked them how they have delivered on their measurables, but certainly the progress seems to be positive, and a lot of the councils that I'm talking to, they're having very good engagement in their communities and positive results so far. If you'd like me to, I could find some more data-driven information to answer that question
Sorry, Chair,
and follow up with it.
I guess what I'm really driving into is to have these sorts of programs and things put in place. But sometimes I wonder where is the end benefit, and where do we get to with an overall benefit to our communities? You know, where does it we get there and we go, yep, this is great. We're going to be a welcoming, inclusive, and we can see the the committed, established, welcome community, advanced, all those sorts of things. And a lot of those things do fall back into our full well-beings and these sort of things. But when we get down the line, what does success look like? Where do we get to and go, this is great because look what it's done for our community.
Yeah.
And sometimes I look at these things and I struggle to get to that point as to see exactly where that is.
Yeah, I can appreciate your perspective on that, and what I can say is, rather than speaking for other councils, what the process for us will involve when we develop that welcoming plan is also being really clear about how we will measure success, and that's something that I'm particularly focused on, is the accountability side of it for us, so that we know we tried this, it worked, it was great for these reasons, or we tried this, it didn't work, we won't do it again, and this is why. That will all be built into the welcoming plan, and that's obviously also particularly important because after the first 3 years of seed funding from MB, it would come to council as a decision on how we proceed with funding the welcoming program in the future. So,
Thank you, Chair.
Worship.
Yeah, thank you, because Dave's already spoken, I can speak. In practical terms, it may be simple to, and Ellie, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but for instance, say we have Whenuapai coming down and you have a people that have moved into our district, they felt welcomed and inclusive in our community. The outcome is they go back to Auckland and say to the other people at base, this is the environment we will put in. Suggest you engage as well. Any comment?
absolutely. Yeah.
Kath, you're still on mute.
Thanks for that, Ellie. I'm really excited to see this delivered in the community, and a good time to do it. My question would be only, obviously we've got the 160,000 coming in from external funding. Can I take that that there will not be any further funding requirements from council?
For the first 3 years, that's correct. That funding is the funding for now. Of course, when we make that welcoming plan, if there are glaringly obvious opportunities that we can take advantage of that will cost money, that would have to come through the formal planning process to make that decision. But in principle, there's no need for any additional funding at this point unless we choose to do so for specific activities.
Can I just ask another subsequent question then? Are we working in collaboration with the likes of Ohakea and etc. If they are bringing in people into the district to help fund this to be whatever they actually require? Is there that collaboration happening? Thank you.
I will say not yet, but in principle, yes. It's certainly intended. So I'm at the very early stages of planning this stock take process that I've described, and that will have a lot of opportunity to have these conversations with different organisations and the likes of Ohakea. And, you know, when we may identify that there are a lot of areas in our district that we're doing really well in those 8 elements, and then we will expect to identify areas where we can improve, and that's where we sort of target activities. And when it comes to deciding what those activities are, that is something for the advisory group to decide and then figure out how to fund that. So if it's an activity that is really specifically targeted towards Ohakea's people coming down from Whenuapai, and we think that it would be really beneficial for them, and we're doing that for them, and whoever is leading that, that would definitely be something where we could say, you know, come to the party and help us out. Or it could just be something that Ohakia makes a commitment to own a particular action on that welcoming plan and they take care of that off their own steam. Camera.
Just a tiny little one, sorry, Ellie. So is it normal practice for companies to take a pastoral care type position and be a big part of that welcoming scenario for their staff? Is that the norm, or is
I don't know if I could actually speak to what the norm is at this point, but I think what the advantage of the way the welcoming standard is structured, it actually allows us to write the rule book ourselves in a way. We can take guidance from other councils who have, you know, set good examples and had successes with certain things, and we can also, you know, take a lead and do something completely out of the box for how it suits us. So what will come out of that stocktake process will hopefully be clear about what the community, the newcomer community needs in order for us to be a welcoming community, and how we decide to solve those needs or meet those needs is entirely up to us. But that's why I'm establishing an advisory group, because it certainly wouldn't be appropriate for me to sit there with all that information and make decisions on my own. And if anybody is particularly interested, you're more than welcome to join this advisory group. It's completely open invitation to anyone in the community who wants to be involved. So,
Question from me. Given that Immigration New Zealand are one of the major funders of this workload, what do they expect in return, or what feeds on from that?
I think, well, that's the sort of where the accreditation program is probably the most formal thing. I think it's technically optional to get those formal accreditations, yeah. But I would say there's probably an expectation. If a council takes that funding for the first 3 years and doesn't succeed, I don't think there are any formal consequences as far as Immigration New Zealand is concerned. I think the expectation is that, well, actually, I probably shouldn't say what the expectation is because I'm not Immigration New Zealand, but I haven't had any information to suggest that anyone has joined this program and then stepped out of it. So as long as those 8 elements are being met, and they have a fairly rigorous sort of measurement process of how to say, yes, we achieved that. I think that's the expectation.
I guess part of my question revolves around sometimes the difficulty of getting skilled people into New Zealand. And if we're part of this grouping, does that mean that a doctor or an engineer or a teacher who applies to come and live and work in Rangitikei gets an easier ride? You know, that'd be nice if that was one of the accreditation ticks that was there. But also, you know, from a different thought, New Zealand does take a reasonable quota of refugees every year. Does that mean that we become a favourable place for people who come from, you know, some pretty tricky parts of the world? I mean, are we seen as a nicer destination? And do we you know, get to help or choose or do whatever?
His Worship actually asked me a similar question yesterday when I gave him a brief introduction to welcoming communities about the refugee side of things. So I've passed that question on to my contacts in Immigration New Zealand, and I would do the same related to your question about bringing in skilled migrants. I don't know if there's a direct link there, but certainly I wouldn't be surprised if you were alone and thinking that could be a nice payoff. So, but yeah, I can investigate that and report back.
Yes, it strikes me in terms of refugees, you know, you might have a war-torn country and a village decides to leave and they seem to scatter, well, at least that's what I perceive, they scatter to all corners of the globe. But you know, in terms of their pastoral care and helping those poor people out, it might be better if Immigration New Zealand said, look, we're going to take Village A and we're going to transplant them and look after them and do it properly instead of had one from here and one from there. I don't know, it's probably way outside the scope of this.
It's certainly outside the scope of the welcoming community standard, but it's not I think it's a question worth asking, so I'll pass it on. See what I find out.
Tracy, you have a question?
Thank you, Chair. So just to confirm in my mind that we actually applied for this funding. Is that correct?
Yes, we did.
Thank you.
The we being everybody who was involved before I joined the organisation, of course.
Okay, yeah.
I
So
wasn't
we
involved.
being Rangitike District Council purposely applied for this funding is what I'm asking.
Correct. They
Yeah,
did.
thank you. That's all I'd like to know.
Okay, so do we have any further questions from anybody? If not, would someone like to move that the report be received? Thank you, Dave, and thank you, Waru. Those in favour say aye. Against, carried. So now we have a choice of two recommendations that we recommend that all elected members of the council sign a statement of commitment, or a selection of them, a select few. So which would we favour as a committee? Nigel.
Well, I think option A, all elected members sign the welcoming communities statement of commitment. You know, this is an opportunity that this whole council should be getting in behind. Fantastic opportunity. So I think that's the correct option rather than trying to handpick people out.
And do I have a seconder? Hey, Councillor Dalgety. Right, would anybody else like to speak towards or against this recommendation? Or without any further ado, those in favour say aye. Against, carried. Well done, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ellie. So we are now moving on to, hang on, I'm just getting my list about me here. Yes. Right, page 25, item number 10. So first of all, we have our Democracy and Planning Group update, operational update. Daryl, I believe this is you.
Thank you. Happy to take the report as read, and as the chairman alluded to before, we got two submissions to the local Easter Sunday trading policy. One was quite colourful, made quite a bit of reference to the Easter Bunny, and the other one was in support. So not a huge buy-in for that, and I'm happy to take any other questions on anything else that is in the report or the attachments.
So who would like to be first? Perhaps if we move that we receive the document, I'll move from chair, and seconded by Councillor Dalgety. Thank you. So who wants to go first? Freedom. Who are we on first? Which one do you want to deal with first? Are we just looking for questions?
Yeah, just any questions on anything.
Who's got a query? Let's see what mine's. Dave, no? Your Worship?
Yeah, since this was written, has been a question raised around whether there's a need to look at control of freedom camping within the urban environment. So what we are seeing is, for instance, we've got a bus that will go and camp outside somebody's property. When the neighbours become a little bit aggrieved, they just move on to the front of another property. We've got in Bulls, we've got a small triangle of park-like land where people have gone and parked up there. Is there a feeling that we want to put some control around that? They're registered warranted vehicles, but they're effectively living in the urban environment on the street. So we have no control at all at the moment. We tend to think of freedom camping as being outside of the urban area, but we haven't contemplated any direction within the urban.
suppose just a comment from me is, as we've stated in the report, this is government focus at the moment. And I know they've been providing some of the feedback from their submission process, and that's, I think, a couple of the rules they're putting in don't come into effect for a couple of years. So, and I know George has tried to make contact with MB to see when the next stage of everything is coming out, so we can keep an eye on what the legislation actually is going to provide.
Oh, okay, Nigel.
Yeah, just a question whether there's any precedent through other areas of similar rural sized communities as ourselves with any bylaws that they have in place in regards with freedom camping. You know, whether they have designated areas within their, around their urban centres for freedom camping and then banning it from urban streets, you know, banning vehicles being parked into urban streets. I'd be interested to know if there are any other councils with a similar issue.
Something we can certainly look at when we start looking into this bylaw.
I think that people are doing that rurally as well.
But it seems to be more accepted rurally. You know, people perceive freedom camping to be more of a rural activity almost. A number of places like Taupo, they deal with it by saying these are the areas and they designate them where this can happen. Previously, we've had a little bit of a look at it and play with it with Marton, behind Marton Memorial Hall, for example. But I have been dealing with 2 or 3 complaints with people, you know, literally parking outside somebody's gate.
So, Your Worship, in the email trail that we had, I commented that I think this is partly due to almost an extension of our homelessness situation where people are electing to actually live in a vehicle versus live in a permanent dwelling. And I mean, certainly in overseas countries, they have trailer parks that become permanent dwelling situations for folk. We, in New Zealand, traditionally haven't gone down that route, but it almost seems like we're starting to go down this route, and this is almost the tip of, or the beginning of the tip of an iceberg, whether it is or not. Chief Executive had a comment.
Well, I think it's from a conversation perspective for the committee. This is originally a topic on freedom camping, and His Worship I support in terms of thinking outside of that to what is it like in an urban environment, because you've got, and having lived overseas for most of my adult life, you know, grass berms are valid places for some parts of the community which are council owned, but you then look at camping and then use of land. I know I've been advised we had grazing horses out the front of Te Marapihi recently, and so members of the public decided to take their horses from the float and graze the horses at Te Marapihi. So we have, so it actually extends the conversation further from freedom camping, and I wonder if you may consider other actions you'd like us to take in this regard. I don't have a recommendation for you, but from
I just wondered whether the issue that His Worship's raised could be better dealt with through, we're reviewing the parking and traffic bylaw, whether there's something that could be worded into that document in regards with parking in an urban sense. You know, whether that's a potential way of dealing with that particular issue, rather than, yeah, yours is more of a broader term of use of public spaces. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. So just to bring us back, so we're talking about a submission to freedom camping and Aotea New Zealand. I think the issue that the Mayor has highlighted is more one of a localised bylaw that may need to be enacted in some way that is a subset of the same issue, but what we've got here is freedom camping submission to New Zealand, and I agree with what the Mayor's saying, and and I have some thoughts and ways around that, but that could be a locally enacted bylaw that we could do as a council on a separate matter, and possibly at any stage that could be raised to deal with the issue that you're talking
about. Kath, and then we'll go to Tracy.
Yeah, I think that's a completely separate issue, parking in the urban areas, and I would hate to see that somehow end up imposing on people that own property that for one reason or another, if they own a caravan or a motorhome or something that they've got parked on the street, that it might cause some sort of opportunity for enforcement upon them. I certainly, yeah, I see them as very, very different situations, and I would like to ensure that we carry on working towards having set freedom camping areas in the district. Yeah, I mean, I'm supportive of the letter that is being suggested here, and especially in favour, obviously, in the last paragraph around identifying homelessness and ensuring that it doesn't further disadvantage those populations.
But yeah. Carol.
Sorry,
Carol's got a comment.
I think we're getting a little bit confused here. The submission that's as part of this paper is a submission that was made back in May, when the Ministry of Innovation called for submission. So that's already there, and we're part of the process of the Freedom Camping review that the government's undertaking. So that's why that submission's there. It's already been submitted. I think what we're talking about now is whether we bump up this to be part of a bylaw that George's program is there. So whether this now has to take precedence over some of the other bylaws that he's got underway. Noting the traffic parking bylaw was up next.
Tracy, you had a question?
Kia ora. I just heard somebody, and I think it was you, Councillor Gordon, make the comment that is this a tip of an iceberg in regards to sorry, I feel like that I'm getting myself confused as well on this, but to do with people that may have that may be using camper vans or those types of things. I know of one person in Taihape, so I don't know how big the problem is, and is it and I take on board what the Mayor has said about him getting complaints, but I know of one person that was a homeowner that chose to live a different lifestyle. So that's one person that I know of absolutely in Taihape that has made that decision. So I don't know if it's getting, I feel like I've gotten confused about the whole thing myself now, but I just wanted to go on board with what Dave had said, and I support that, but also the letter. So that's my feedback into this corridor.
Yes, just picking up on Chief Executive's comment before about public spaces, and Carol's on the bylaw. You know, historically, most TAs actually own public campgrounds, and I suspect if we wind the clock back 30 years, that's where this, you know, people actually went. And if we look at ourselves, we've actually sold off or discontinued all of them. And so we don't currently have that capacity, in inverted commas. The private sector is providing some of that people are actually choosing not to go there. So I wonder, you know, if we start looking at what are we going to do with publicly owned space in the future, possibly we need to have an eye to that thought, whether or not we go there or not, you know, and what the outcome is that we want. Could be open for question. Worship.
Yeah, Gordon is quite correct. What I'm doing here are two things. One, testing the appetite for council to be involved in this. But two, when you've made a submission to government, as we have done, correctly, that actually opens a door to you to be involved further with government in terms of select committee process and procedure from there on in. So if that door is opened by way of this submission, what I'm wanting to try and gauge is your feeling around whether there should be an urban separation here in some shape or form. Is that more correctly put? I have pointed out to those people that complain that if you really want to progress something with council, the way to do it is actually write a letter to council, and being the chief executive in council, to put a position in front of us. So, you know, people have absolutely the right to go to a mayor or a councillor and say, this is a concern, but in terms of progressing work, it's much simpler if somebody actually puts something in writing as to what they want.
Your Worship, do you feel you've had enough feedback from the committee?
Yes.
Have we got any? Jill, you've got a question?
Yes. So there's this is very complicated, this subject, because I experience this rurally, but I also see this in Taihape, but not just with freedom campers, but we have a large number of trucks who come in to Taihape, and they effectively are freedom camping. And we are going to produce a wonderful amenities block shortly, which will in fact make it better and make it worse, I would think, once people know that that facility's there. So I can see that we really do need some control or guidelines at least. And I would think in the first place that there are a huge number of examples of how other councils are dealing with this. So perhaps we should be looking at those examples first before anything else.
Thank you, Jill. Right, Carol, have you had enough feedback to?
Yes, I suppose the only question in my mind is, do you want this bumped up on the list that George has provided on page 29, where he shows you his policy work schedule? Did you want this one added to that now, or after the government has come out with their findings from their submission process?
What is the date for the government's?
That's what we can't find out. I know they have released some information, and George has been trying to get more information off MB to see when that's expected.
And so in next year's policy program, this is 2022,
Yes.
what month are we effectively looking at? You know?
It's not on the radar at all at the moment.
Okay.
It just came up from a query from His Worship to you 4 weeks ago.
Through you, Chair, could I suggest that we leave it till after the government's position is found out, because the government position that comes out may in fact include some of the concerns that we've got, so we therefore could be doubling up. I do come back to the point that I made earlier. Local issues that we need to deal with can be dealt with by this council at any stage through that policy, but I think we should wait until the government's position has come out, so we're not trying to reinvent the wheel anywhere along the way.
Councillor Wilson?
Yeah, I agree with that point, but also take advantage of the ability to take part in the submission process to government. You know, that's, as His Worship has suggested, that it's our opportunity to have some input into whatever they're going to formulate and send out as a potential legislation. So once that's done, then certainly a bylaw, if we have to create one, if it's not actual legislation across the country.
Happy with that?
Yes, thank you.
Very good. Right, moving on. What's next in this block?
There's no other questions, it's just...
So would someone like to move the reception?
Move to receipt of.
Thank you, Dave. And seconded, thank you, Nigel. Doesn't have to say aye. And against? Carried.
Sorry, is this for 10.2?
Yeah, now we're up to 10.2.
Oh, we'd already moved and seconded.
Oh, have we done 10.1?
Yeah, it just wasn't carried.
Oh, thank you. Hopefully we had the same names.
No.
We really are doubling up. Yeah, right. Item 10.2, our community development update. Nadia and Aileen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Kia ora koutou. I'll keep this relatively brief. I'll note that my team has been incredibly busy as per usual, so have their own reports rather than all being folded into one large report. Really just noting possibly the impacts of COVID in this report. So our digital coordinator under 3.6, Rashmi, her face-to-face interactions with the community have been severely limited through COVID restrictions. However, she has found other ways in which to support by phone and online with some of them. Some of the online tutorials were only possible because she had previously worked with them face-to-face, so they knew how to use online, so that was fortuitous. But quite interesting, since the COVID protection framework came into place last week, all 3 libraries have been inundated with people needing support to get their vaccine passports. And by get, I don't mean necessarily print, but actually how to navigate the system of obtaining them. We've had a number of our staff going into the libraries providing additional support. Some phone calls to the MOH have, the Ministry of Health, have been up to 4 hours long in order to help some people. On top of that, we've also had staff from Te Kotuku Hauora who have asked to come in and support their clients and people through the library system. So it's been a really great community project to support. Other than that, with that report, I'll just take any questions.
Well, who would like to be first? Please.
Oh, it's a significant peak on page 32 on the website statistics. Was that related to the advertisement?
Previous
report.
Oh,
We're currently on page 40.
oh, missed that question, opportunity.
No, we can answer that. Sorry, go page, just quote the page again. Website stats, 35, was it?
No, lost
32.
it.
32. Okay. Spike in November.
Yeah. Do we know what might have caused that? Was all I was interested in. Doubled.
Is it a guess and say it was probably COVID? Date of information. No, I can find out and let you know.
Thank you. Sorry.
Okay. Back to questions for Nadia. Oh, now Tracy.
Kia ora. Just to mihi to our RDC staff for taking up that mantle of helping people within the community attain their COVID passes. It's yeah, just to say that I'm assuming everybody has got them, but it is a simple. It is actually quite a simple process, but if you're not used to going through using those systems, it can be very confusing. But so I just want to mihi to all of the library staff from within council that have been able to assist our constituents, our people, with getting that sorted out.
Nadia, I have a question in terms of community-led development of council facilities, 4.2. How are those 4 groups getting on? You know, these groups, they sort of arrive here, they'll do a presentation, then they go off out there into the wilderness. Are they forging ahead?
If I can go through one by one,
Sure.
Mr. Chair. So the Taihapia Memorial Playground Group, yes, they are. They're still meeting regularly. I joined them, I think it must have been during this reporting period. Noting though that everything needs to just be on pause for a moment while we get the parks, open spaces and sports facility strategy in play. So they're still there. They're still doing what they can, but bearing in mind that pause is on. The Marton Development Group, they are looking at how to finish off the Tūtau Purupuru Action Trail and what that looks like for them, with some additional funding and perhaps the finished concept of that trail. The Lions Club of Marton, they've just engaged with us. They're interested in perhaps putting in a barbecue at Te Ahurumawai Playground, but they're still in discussion about that as a club, so that's yet to be formalised by them. And the Sir James Wilson Development Group, they're meeting a lot of the other users at the moment and trying to form a larger picture of what the community might want for Wilson Park.
Right, so they're all still active and working in their space.
Sure. Yes. His Worship the Mayor has rightly pointed out that there's also the Ratana Playground Group. They're not listed here as I haven't met with them during this period, but they are continuing with their endeavours as well.
I was just going to ask about Marton.
Yeah, we've got some more queries or questions for Nadia on this item. If not, thank you, Nadia. Who would like to recommend that the report be received? His Worship, thank you. On the board. Waru. Secondly. Those in favour say aye. Against, carried. Right. So item 10.3, page 42. Nadia, you seem to be the lead again.
I have. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Once again, I will take most of the report as read. A lot of it is information that you have received a few times before. My purpose for that is not so much to remind the committee, but these are public documents, so should a member of the public pick it up for the first time, they've got the background. If I can perhaps just draw your attention to 6.3 through to 6.6, the enormous impact that COVID has had again, not just on the organisations, but subsequently on the community. So highlighted there are the number of cancellations of events that have taken place thus far, some of which were included in the MOU agreements or work plans, some were not. I included the ones that were not, just, I guess, to highlight that further impact. With consideration to the ones that are included in the MOU work plan, I am working with the coordinators of those organisations, being the Bulls and District Community Trust and the Taihapia Community Development Trust, as to what else could be delivered in place of what has been cancelled. Other than that, I'm very happy to take questions.
Quick question from me, Chair, thank you. Forgive my ignorance. How often are these MOUs reviewed?
The MOU agreement as a whole and the funding in which Council agrees to deliver is done with the long-term plan. The work plan and deliverables are done on a yearly basis.
The work plan and the deliverables. The basic fundamental of the MOU remains in place, but the deliverables of the work plan is yearly.
Correct.
And who's that done with, in conjunction with?
In terms of staff?
Yeah.
So myself? Yeah,
The reason,
it's signed off by the Chief Executive.
the reason that I ask it is if we look forward to some of the deliverables that are in the plan, sadly they're not going to be achievable, I don't believe. If we're really honest, some of these things, we may well be in a position this time next year of having the same situation where we've got all these things sitting in here in front of us as being cancelled. So do we need to consider what a different deliverable may be, or even a reset of what these MOUs are, because these are, important. They're important groups within our district, and they each individually represent a large number of the groups within their communities, and they all do some great stuff. But if we're reporting back to a deliverables or an MOU that's largely may in fact be unachievable, maybe we need to have a greater look at it and just see. Not sure how that could be done or when it could be done, but I just wonder if we could be in the same spot next year, not being able to achieve what we're trying to achieve, and then potentially wasting their efforts on something that may not be achievable. Just throwing that out there.
Not in relation to that, but yeah, good point. But unfortunately, in the challenging times, hopefully it's a temporary type issue that will change. But in regards with the reports that have been provided, it's encouraging to see the AGM reports provided there. I think it gives a real indication as to what these groups do, rather than just providing the funding that council provides and then what they deliver there. These groups go well and above and beyond, that funding and what they attract into the community. So that's fantastic to have that added in there. My question was around the investment. So we've got no group represented in Marton, and I know that funding was put towards delivering those events, which could potentially not take place. That funding, if it's not spent, does it sit in the, council coffers not to be spent, or could it be carried over to help set up the new organisation? That's a question that I'd be interested in, because Marton is struggling to come up with an organisation at present, and if we can perhaps provide some further or extra funding towards a group to help kickstart something and get it off the ground, that might be a beneficial use of that money rather than just seeing it sit there and not be utilised. And I think that could be a question that we could recommend to council to look at carrying over those unspent funds to a new potential organisation if one is formed.
Through you, Mr. Chair, and I'm happy to be corrected by... Sorry, though I forgot I needed to speak up. I'm happy to be corrected by senior staff here, but would perhaps a list of options of what that funding could be used for should Harvest Fair not go ahead? I think if we're to look at where we're currently sitting, the idea is that we're still going ahead with Harvest Fair. We're looking at a final cut-off date to make that decision being 17th of January. And then I think the conversation could continue with perhaps options on what that funding could be used for, including the carry forward of that for a potential new startup.
Yeah, I'd certainly be interested, once we know the outcome of whether a Harvest Fair does take place or not. I'd certainly be interested in knowing ways of utilising that spending for the benefit of the Marton community when we're sitting in a bit of a lull at the moment.
Yes. So we're going to generation action. Who wants to make the summary?
Yeah. So basically, once we know the outcome of the funding going towards the implementation of Harvest Fair, if that event doesn't take place, or if there's some unspent funds, that something comes from,
So this is
quite a few words to get together.
Yeah.
That option's been brought back in front of this committee to decide on the spending of the remainder of the unspent funds and how that is utilised.
I wonder if there's, perhaps if I say any unspent MOU funds are advised to this committee.
Back to this committee, yeah.
And then when we do that, you can make a decision.
It's basically around the Marton allocation, because we know that the other funding has already gone to the other partners and they're delivering, but we have no MOU partner in Marton at the moment, and I think that's a potential opportunity.
Your Worship, are you commenting on this recommendation?
Yeah, there are 2 or 3 things I want to comment on here, but first of all, a clarification that I'm sure Nadia will be able to give me. So when Project Marton formally wound up, money in their accounts was passed through to council to hold. What happened to that money that was sitting in effectively the Project Marton account? That organisation was formally wound up.
Yes.
With the prospect of another organisation sitting, so presumably the money sitting in their account was held in some form of trust. Because what I'm getting at here are there are potentially two sorts of money here. First of all, the money that Project Marton had, and if we're just holding it, then that's independent to us. We're just holding it in a trust type position. But what you're dealing with is the money that comes from the MOU that we have with them. So I just want to make clear that there could be two separate sources of money here. I mean, I'd absolutely agree that it would be beneficial for you to come back with some options around how money could be spent and so on in the future. The other comment I'll make is our engagement with these trusts. So yes, there's an MOU which is developed by staff and is reported back to us. They have a responsibility to engage also with the community and the governors, and in the past that has been by way of their AGM. And it's probably unfortunate that this year, for instance, the Tai Happy Trust, we didn't receive an invitation to that AGM. And I have gone back to the trust and said that was a pity, and they've said unofficially, yes, we will make sure that that doesn't happen again. And I'd rather just leave that there. There were circumstances at the time. But that is our other method of engaging. And the last point is just to remind us that the MOU that we fund is only part and parcel of what they deliver. So most of the money they have and services they deliver may well sit outside of the MOU. So,
Okay. So are we clarifying this undertaking?
Yeah, I'm happy with the wording of that. I think that leaves it broadly open to come back with options.
I'll second Councillor Dodge.
You have a recommendation? Okay. Okay, now we've got Kath online. You wanted to raise a question?
Yes, please. A bit of it's already been covered, obviously. But in some of these MOU reports, I'm just wondering about the wording in some of them. A number of them have a comment made on them saying this activity may be eligible for additional financial funding from council. And this comment shows up on a number of these deliverables. I'm just wondering where the thinking is with that. Have we got a pool of funding that we can tap into for these various things? One of them is actually the Welcoming Communities program. I understood from our previous report from Ellie that she'll be delivering that. Am I misunderstanding that? Is the other MOU teams delivering that, or is Ellie delivering that? And if there's more funding, I'm just not too sure how that's all going to, how all that plays out.
Quote a page number, please, Kath.
It's on lots of pages, Angus, but say take page 57, Welcoming Communities Program, and on the bottom there it says this activity may be eligible for additional financial funding from council. Same with Matariki things, and so a number of them have got that on their outcomes. So that was one question. And around the AGM reports that we received from the MOU partners, wondering if we've actually seen them from Project Marton since they've been wound up or for their 2020 year.
Thank you, Councillor Ash, through you, Mr. Chair. If I can start with your first question. The reason for putting in some clarity around eligibility of funding is it has been a bit of a sticky point with our MOU partners before. There are definitely some deliverables in there which do not receive any additional funding, such as the events. However, some of the other ones may be eligible. So, for example, the Welcoming Communities program, yes, Ellie Thompson is the facilitator of that program, but as she mentioned when she addressed the committee, it is a community plan with community actions and activities. There is a pool of funding outside of the salary component of that can contribute towards some activities. So this MOU partnership isn't exclusive of potentially using some of that funding alongside an activity that they're doing with council. So that's the sort of potential additional funding that could be applicable. Same with Puanga Matariki. There may be some other funding through Creative Communities or event sponsorship scheme that could help fund that activity. I wanted to be very clear on what was eligible for additional funding and what wasn't. And these in their template form came before the committee. I couldn't tell you what month that was, but it would have been maybe July. In response to the second one, I do not have any AGM from Project Marton for their last financial year. I'm happy to seek that.
Thank you, Nadia. So that's an undertaking, or is that just taken as an undertaking on that one here?
I missed it, I'm sorry.
For Nadia to seek a yearly report from Project Marton.
Yeah, their final AGM or
the 2020. You quote the year, I'm not sure.
That would be for their 2020-21 year.
Yeah, I'm happy with that.
Sorry, question. Would that include where those unspent funds sit? Because that may be a little bit unclear at the moment by the sound of it.
Correct, I'm unclear. Yeah. And information on unspent funds.
Okay. Any further questions? If not, would someone like to move the reception of 10.3? I'll do from the chair. And the seconder, thank you, Councillor Wilson. Those in favour say aye. And against? Carried. Thank you. Right, so item 10.4, page 118. Jen and Nadia, welcome to the table, Jen. So, in terms of district promotions and destination management plan update, the floor is yours.
I'm happy to take the report as read, actually.
Have we got some questions for Jen? Councillor Dalgety,
Hi, Jen, loved your report, thank you. Interested in how many, you've listed the groups of people you engage with in the last reporting period. What I was trying to allude to was with your destination management plan and that social point interaction and whether there was face-to-face interaction as well. Tell me if there wasn't. How many sort of people were you able to connect with?
Through you, Chair. I haven't actually gone as far as numbers.
Yeah.
I will get Kylie to do the statistic data from the background of the social pinpoint, and that'll tell us exactly how many different people engage with that platform.
I guess to reframe it, were you happy with the number of responses you got? And
I think all things considered, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
In a trying few months.
Yeah.
Subsequent question is further down here somewhere.
You want to pop your page number when you get there, Steve?
Yeah, it's just a little bit of a typo, I remember. You've repeated, just before it goes out to public, the comments are repeated twice. Okay, on page 144, that lack of recognition comment is repeated twice. Because I know the person that wrote it.
Oh, I see. Just reiterating the comment.
You're all good there, Fee? Okay, so we've got 2 questions online. We'll start with Tracy.
Kia ora. So on page 151, can you tell me under the gifted elements, you've got 2 tohu that are there. One's tūtai poroporo. Can you tell me what the other one is, please?
Through you, Chair. I actually cannot. These items were gifted before my time, but I can go back to staff to seek some more clarification around it.
Yeah, I'd be very interested to know what the second one is under the land taniwha, because there is a, you've got it in there saying pōkura, and I don't know whether that's something that's come from Ngāti Apa or come from the northern side. There is a land taniwha, but it's not pōkura. So when I read that, I was thinking, what is that? What is that? I think I know what it is, but I don't want to preempt it in case whoever put this in, we're talking to Ngāti Apa and they had a different, taniwha that they were, well, a tupuna that they were referring to. Because as much as it said taniwha for Māori, that's actually a tupuna. They are tupuna. They're kaitiaki to us. So I'd be very interested if someone can at some stage get back to me, because I'd like to know what that's actually referring to, please.
We'll just grab that as an undertaking, Tracy.
Thank you.
Who's got the wording? Who's got the wording?
Just draft them up, sorry.
Okay.
So the person that makes the question would like.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're just going to get it spot on from what
Yep.
they're looking for.
So I'll just read this out for you, Tracy, because you won't have that on your screen. And so the undertaking is Councillor Hiro requested that staff investigate what the second gifted element is for the brand style and where it came from. Is that the wording that you feel appropriate? And we're putting in tūkura in brackets after gifted element. You're on mute, Tracy. Sorry.
Sorry about that. I'm busy talking to myself then. Yes, it's more, I'd like to know more around the name, because that says pōkura, but in the northern rangi tike, it's pohokura. But I don't know if that's what that's referring to. It could be to something that's in Ngāti Apa, which in the southern area, which I don't think so, but yes, I'd appreciate if someone can get back to me. I just need to know what that is.
So an important part of your question is the source, the original source.
Yes. Yeah. And where does that actually refer to? That would be good. Thank you.
Perhaps if it says second gifted element, pōkura, and its source, that will get it absolutely clear. Oh, I suppose where it came from. Yeah. everyone clear and happy on that one?
Tied it up, Ash. Yeah.
Right, Jill, and then Kat.
Thank you. I've just got a couple of little things. So on page 18, or the original page, was it 181 or 187? Sorry, I've lost it now. The list of people you've engaged with, Jen, which is very impressive, by the way. It just says Taiapa Community Committee. It should be Taiapa Community Board. And page 154 of the report, it says under expect the unexpected, it says where people come to life, should be where with an H. But I just want to say, apart from that, that's really great to see this report from where I was last engaged with this to now. You've come a huge, long way, and yeah, I'd like to congratulate you on that. Thank you.
Kat, thank you for those comments, Jill.
Yeah, thanks for the report. It's great to see some real thought being put into it. But I was wondering if there is an updated version of what the outcomes are that you're working towards, what the timeline is going to be. What are we actually wanting to physically achieve out of this? What does that look like? You know, we've got some really, really great words here, but just wanting to know how that translates into outcomes for the entire district.
Through you, Chair. With any luck, the next policy and planning meeting, we will have the draft document in hand, which will help tell that story a lot more and actually answer those questions.
Thank you.
Your worship.
Yes, going back to page 1, I think it's 118, the implementation group, and you're asking for council to nominate a couple of elected representatives on that. What's the makeup of that you've got that we would be adding to? You know, how many organisations have said that they want to be on it, and where are they from in terms of regionalisation spread, if you like?
So currently we have 3 tourism-based businesses. They've all been in the industry for a significant amount of time, so a lot of knowledge there. I have 2 general business owners, and aside from internal staff and then soon to be elected members and possibly track members, there is room for a couple more wider community stakeholders.
Do you see this as being, because it's destination focused, is this the sort of pseudo replacement of rangatahi tourism and nature? You know, what's their brief? The brief around the group, I'll build that with everybody once we have that draft, because that draft is what's going to be giving us the strategic priorities and our actions going forward. That will help us understand better the role that group is going to play across the document. Okay, so you're going to get those people together and they look at almost terms of reference type approach.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Question from me, Jen. Within the plan, it doesn't necessarily drill down into the real operational detail of who's cheerleading for what outcome. Is that where this group helps? This group we've just been talking about helps pull that together. It says, look, we need a cheerleader for the tramping part of this plan. Who wants to be it? Is that?
That's essentially it, yes.
Right. Thank you. Oh,
on the name.
okay.
So we do have an update through on the name from Leah. She suggested that it is a spelling error, that the name is actually Pohokura.
So it's P-O-H-O.
K-U-R-A, yeah.
So it's probably out of the north, Tracy.
Yeah.
But we can still follow up on the origin of that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to know where to get one of those tops from. You know, it's the old story, if you don't talk it up yourself, nobody else will. So, yeah, I want one.
There's one in the back of my office. It goes missing. I know where to go.
Yeah, but I can wear that.
It's guaranteed not to fit.
You know, I think the symbol, by the way, is great. I think it's fantastic. But yeah, give me one of those tops and tell me how much you got to pay, and I'll take them. So.
So have we got any more questions for Jen? No? Yes, no? Look, thank you for the work so far, Jen. This is really coming together well. This is looking really good. Would someone like to move that the promotions and destination management plan update be received? Thank you, Nigel. And seconded, Fee. Those in favour say aye. And against, carried. So our second recommendation is around putting some councillor reps into this space. Has Nadia or Worship got some ideas? Or do we ask for some nominations, or have some people already indicated to Jen or Nadia?
If you don't mind, Chair, I'd like to pass that on to Jen. This is her plan, if she has any.
No, not as yet. I've sort of just left that floor open to those that are interested.
Do you want those names today? I suppose in terms of recommendation, it'd be nice.
It would be nice. It becomes quite important end of February, start of March, so there's a little bit of...
Okay, so when's, just thinking ahead, we've got a policy in February, policy plan in February. So if people are feeling a bit shy, we can have another stab at it, but is there anybody who'd like to put their hand up, who has a real passion for the space?
I will.
Thank you, Pete. Councillor Dalgety.
Chair, I might, through you, if I might add, you know, the skill set and the drive and the passion that Jen is looking to take the lead on it may not necessarily be from around this table, and I would just be thinking to make sure that we've got enough spaces from within the community to fill, rather than, and I know Jen, you indicated, but you know, this needs buy-in from our community and drivers from there. And I believe those people are out there to take this to its next level. And I would just make sure that we had plenty of space for those drivers from with the community that can take this to the level that we want it to go to, rather than filling it up with.
I won't take offence.
No. I see three little black dots there. Your name's written on one of them. I'm just wondering that I don't see it as necessary to fill the other two with councillors. No offence, meant please.
We extract cotton now.
Yes, yeah. This is me digging myself out of a really big hole right about now. So, just I make that comment because there may be people in the community that we really need to be talking to.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Kath, is this a question or are you nominating?
No, it's just a question or a comment, I guess. In relation to Dave's, Councillor Wilson's comment, I do think it's really important to ensure that we do have elected members on there to ensure that we're meeting council's brief as well. And I think having that involvement is very important, given this is a deliverable from council, that our interests are within the group. So yeah, just a comment to Councillor Wilson's comment.
Another question.
Oh, Jill.
Thank you. I do have a real passion around this and interest. but I would prefer, before committing to myself to such a situation, an ask, it's a big ask, that I could have a conversation with Jen perhaps around this a bit, you know, just to understand a bit more the requirements, because I don't want to let anyone down.
Just a couple of quick practical things around this group. These people would be funded by way of transport, that they're voluntary in nature.
Yes.
And but they don't have an operating budget in the way that Rangitikei Tourism, for instance, was funded by Council House. So if they want to progress something as an action, what's the mechanism for them to do that? So if we get what I'm getting at is we get a group of people together and they sit around the table and they say, we want to do this. Do we need to assign a budget to it, or how does that develop? What do they progress and how do they progress it? Or is it just to set up the actual plan and contract that we need to have in place with Rangitikei?
That again comes down to the final document.
Yeah.
Because until we know what our strategic priorities might be or where our focus areas are, yeah. I mean, we've got an idea.
So it's it's a working group to develop, essentially.
Yes.
If I could add to that, please, Mr. Chair, what I foresee happening, and it might be not just the case with the destination management plan, but perhaps even the welcoming communities plan, is that we've currently allocated funding to the development of it, not knowing what the outcomes are going to be. So there's been no further budget allocated because it's a bit of an unknown situation. Following the outcomes of both of those plans, either through an annual plan process or the next long-term plan process, staff may come back to elected members with a better understanding and a better business case for what additional funding may be required.
Yes, that's what I'm getting at. You put that very well. Thank you.
Right, we've got Tracy online.
I'd just like to nominate Jill Duncan. Thank you.
Looks like the die's been cast, Jill. Are you happy with that, following your conversation?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tracy.
Okay, Jen, there were three bullet points there below recommendation 2. You're just happy? Are you happy with 2 councillors in that space?
Yeah. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Assuming that Chief Executive and staff are also.
Yes.
Okay. So, look, I'll move from the chair that councillors Fidel Getty and Jill Duncan be appointed as members of the Destination Rangitikei Implementation Group. And I'm seeking a seconder from Councillor Kanapa. Thank you.
Sorry, please just clarify, is the recommendation for Councillor Duncan subject to her having an offline conversation?
I don't think so anymore. I think Councillor Duncan's happy. She's not shaking her head, so.
Sorry,
Councillor Kanapa.
thank you.
Noted.
Right, so we've got that there. Those in favour say aye. Aye, and against, carried. Right, thank you. So, page 157, item 10.5, our economic development update. Jamie, welcome to the table.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon.
I'm sorry.
The economic development update for October and November provides an overview of the key activities that the economic development team have been involved in during the reporting period.
Oh, finally, our mics are a bit muted today and our people online are struggling to hear unless we project.
Okay, well, I apologize. This is a lifelong habit of speaking softly, so let me start over. The economic development update for October and November provides an overview of the key activities that the economic development team have been involved in during the reporting period. Additionally, it includes a 5-month update to the economic development work plan and reporting framework 2021 to 2022. The update provides a report on the progress achieved during the period July through November and presents, where possible, actual versus projected results and the percent achieved toward key performance indicator results, as well as activities that were postponed due to COVID-19 alert level protocols or the unavailability of partners or key stakeholders, and which have been rescheduled for delivery later in the year in 2022. Through you, Mr. Chair, I would like to highlight 2 items on the reporting framework under housing in which Council has achieved its annual key performance indicator results for the year, and that indicate the regular steady progress being made in the social housing space. The first is social housing groups are established in the district, and the second is to facilitate the evolution of district social housing groups into community housing providers. With Economic Development Department facilitation, 2 social housing groups have been established in the district. The Door of Hope Rangatiki Community Housing Trust, located in Marton, is an umbrella group that is committed to the provision of social housing throughout the district, with a primary focus on southern parts of the district, including Marton, Bowles, Turriquina, Hunterville, etc. It has received donations from local churches and Marton Christian Welfare to cover a portion of its ongoing administration costs, and has become a member of Community Housing Aotearoa, CHA, the peak national social housing body, representing more than 100 members, including community housing providers and partner members such as developers, consultants, and local councils. The Door of Hope Community Housing Trust has developed a strategic plan, which is a key component of the application process to be registered as a community housing provider by the Community Housing Regulatory Agency, which falls under the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development, with mentoring from Community Housing Aotearoa. And it is in the process of reaching out to more churches, social service organizations, and iwi throughout the district to broaden its board representation and better align itself with the community, reflecting the diversity of social housing need. The Northern Rangatiki Housing Steering Group is based in Taihape and works to address the housing needs of Mangaweka, Ohingate, Utiku, Taihape, and other settlements in the northern part of the district as a subcommittee member of the Door of Hope Rangatiki Community Housing Trust, and it has a member on the Community Housing Trust board. The steering group has been very actively identifying potential pieces of land on which social housing, community housing, in this case being council-owned pensioner flats, and entry-level privately owned housing that can be located in Taihape. It's very gratifying to see these 2 housing groups make progress toward their goal of delivering more housing, particularly social housing, within the district over the next few years going forward. If we all cast our minds back to a year ago to the presentation to council by Mark Taylor and Lance Patterson of the Living Hope Church concerning the need for social housing in the district, I believe we can judge the progress that has been made in a short period of time. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And with that, I'm happy to take the economic development update for October and November and the economic development work plan and reporting framework 2021 to 2022 as read, and to answer any questions you may have.
Who'd like to be first?
Thanks, Jaime. So of particular interest to this when I read this was the whole community housing issue, which, look, it's a New Zealand-wide problem, and it's a huge problem. And with it, problems that are associated with that are well documented, with obviously people having to move out of homes that are being sold, and children having to move schools, and the issues that come with it. So the two groups that you've identified there, and there's the Door of Hope and the one that was in the north. Out of those two groups, what other external agencies have you been engaged with in that period with regards to that scope? Because when I say external agencies, I mean the problem's that big that if we look at it from a broad point of view, we need to know where it sits in the government's platform with regards to some really meaningful deliverables of affordable housing. So what other outside agencies, apart from these two groups that have formulated, are you engaged with perhaps some bigger questions as to what we can do?
Thank you for that. To begin with, we sponsored council that has sponsored a presentation by Habitat for Humanity probably 9 months ago. Speak up, Tony. I'm sorry. Council approximately 9 months ago sponsored a presentation by Habitat for Humanity here in Chambers, and they are a very experienced group that has terrific programs and have offered a lot of support. Both of these organizations, the one in the south, the one in the north, have gone back and have been in discussions with them. It's quite likely that we'll try to get the Habitat representative to come and make a presentation up in Taihape, probably early next year. In addition to them, we had a presentation from, Hope Simonson. I'm trying to remember the name of her organization, but it was it was at the emergency end of the social housing spectrum. And again, national organization that she provided some very clear guidance to be able to help these two organizations figure out who their clientele is and what their mission is. She basically said, if you're a social housing provider, stay away from the emergency housing space. It's just too complicated. There are already plenty of providers out there. And up until now, our problem here in the district is not nearly large enough to justify putting resources into that. In neighboring districts, we've got good emergency housing suppliers. Additionally, we've talked with, and we had a presentation from the general manager of Manawatu Community Trust, which is a very large council-controlled organization that provides social housing primarily around Fielding, very successfully and very profitably, I might add. Again, they've offered unlimited support and backing, and it was a terrific orientation on their part. More about the sort of the nitty-gritty of the operational concerns involved with being a tenancy manager.
So just further to that, if I may, and perhaps it's where I'm going, we've had presentations from the Manawatu Trust here in a couple of trienniums ago, which was presented to this council. Are they actively engaged in building new or managing their stock? I guess where I'm really trying to get to is, I don't know that we need to be the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. So with regards to the emergency housing, because that's not the issue that I think we're dealing with as our communities here and in the north and the other places. So I'm trying to figure out, is there any organisation that you've reached out to or talking to that we're having some meaningful conversations with about partnering up to literally get some spades in the ground? And I know that's big, and it's a big, big issue to deal with. But somewhere along the line, that's the only thing that fixes our housing needs, is the ability to get affordable houses on the ground for the families of our district, to get some surety around how they live, where they live. There's some surety that they're not going to be asked to move at the next 90-day tenancy period because their house is going to be sold, and so that we can get these kids and families into schools and social and environments. But at what stage do we get something bigger than a report.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, I would like to respond by saying that Habitat has put their hand up and said they would be very happy to partner with any of the organizations that emerge here in the district. They've got good sources of funding. Most of them are actually sources of funding that these agencies can access directly. So Door of Hope and the Housing Steering Group up there, if they go the route of establishing themselves as community housing providers, which means that they are recognized by and register with the Community Housing Regulatory Agency managed by HUD, then they qualify to be able to negotiate directly with MSD to be able to enter into a contract to receive future payments for IRRS subsidies. These are income-related rental subsidies that bridge the gap between the amount of money that WINS pays somebody for housing and the true market-related rental cost. So that portion of the total rental cost can be banked by an organization and for as much as up to 20 years based on their projections of how many clients they'll have.
And that's fine if you've got the housing stock.
Well, no, actually, that money is useful in that it's generally used by community housing providers to buy land and build houses. And so that's a route into developing housing stock by these organizations without having to partner with a larger umbrella organization. I'm not dismissing that, and I think that actually it would be quite helpful if they did partner. But nevertheless, there are several routes to be able to raise the money and to build houses. There are also, and this is commercially in confidence and sensitive, there are other potential investors that would be interested in this space. Without going any further, it's probably best.
I can appreciate that, and sorry if I'm being a little bit blunt, but I just want to like to see some spades in the ground and see something that's a little bit tangible to trying to deal with this issue, which is something that's been bouncing around, which seems to me for years. And I apologise, Chair, I've probably said plenty now.
So it's just been suggested to me by the Chief Exec that given the importance of this topic, that we might actually want to move this to a workshop with all elected members. We do, strategy-wise, that might be quite useful.
Yeah.
If people would like to add more.
I would open it up if elected members would find that helpful based on that questioning. We did obviously have a workshop on housing during the LTP, but the work that Jaime's put in, an update on that, I'd be quite happy for us to support that if elected members wish. I see Councillor Hero nodding, but I'll leave that for you to chair.
Your Worship, you've got a comment, and then we're going to Councillor Hero after that.
Yeah, I had 2 or 3 comments with regard to this. The first is there a need to workshop some of the stuff or put into public excluded? Absolutely, because there are areas of information that can't be out in public arena. But that should not replace this process. So we still have a requirement to go through, and in terms of public transparency, most of this report. The only one in the report that I'd like to bring attention to, and I'm nervous around, in terms of page 161, in the middle of 161, the new jobs created, existing jobs retained by anchor businesses and local value chain, with a note, it's difficult to obtain information and this may need to be removed in the future. I strongly disagree. So when we're talking economic development and generating jobs, sure, there'll be a lot of jobs that are generated outside of our sphere that we don't know about, and that's fine. But where we have contributed to a number of jobs and outcomes in terms of measuring our effectiveness, then that is important. And we will get some very good figures and we're getting all sorts of information, but I'd hate to see it as a line item removed. So really just jumping in case the next report comes back and it's not on there, I would be looking for it.
Jaime, have you got any feedback in terms of why it's so difficult to get that information out of businesses?
I take on board what His Worship has said, and I think it's a very valid point. This is important data if we can gather it. So far, in talking with a very limited spectrum of larger firms that we've had anything to do with in terms of support and providing assistance, there's great hesitancy to share this information. Now, hopefully, I can be corrected, and there are others who have relationships that I could tap into that would enable us to get this information. But up until now, I think the reticence is to share this information, which may be proprietary, may be related to a competitive advantage, or just give an indication to their competitors, whether they're growing, whether they're not, what their investment plans are. But I don't want to surmise here. I don't want to guess what the motivations are. I would suggest that this requires more investigation, and if we can possibly get the information, I think it's very valuable to do so.
So as part of the issue, firms' perceptions of how it might be displayed. I mean, if we had it displayed in a blind format that just said 15 jobs have been created in North Rangitikei or in the Rangitikei full stop, that might assuage some of their fears.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. I mean, quite rightly, the report points out, for instance, the success of the Mahi Tahi program in terms of numbers. There'll be all sorts of jobs created that we may or may not know about. And there will be some companies, even the companies that we're working with, who want to keep their figures reasonably quiet. But in terms of if we are applying to government for funding, you know, in terms of economic development, in terms of this broad sort of role, we need to be able to demonstrate this has been the effectiveness of the programs we've put in place. I just see it as, I'd hate to see us think this is too hard for us to provide any data.
Yeah, no, I'd back up your point, Your Worship. I mean, look, I'm involved with an organisation that is, part of the key funding is around employing people, and that's, you know, they're out there doing stuff, but, you know, it's about having FTEs on the ground, and you know, the government agencies push really hard to have that, and, you know, we're able to deliver. So that's a key one.
Yeah. And you have to look at the moment, we have KPIs really in terms of government funding that we've got. First of all, in terms of Mahi Tahi, in terms of PDU money, etc. They're quite explicit around job outcomes. And so if we don't get data together, we're poor.
Okay, I'm going to go to Tracy and then Jill.
Kia ora, thank you for that. I just wanted to say that I think the report is really good. And it covers a whole lot of different areas that I've had my 2 cents nose poked into in different ways. And I'd like to just support what you've said, Andy. The information, as far as I'm concerned, should be there because it also whakapakaris, or it also supports the whole reason of having an economic development officer in the first place. In regards to the kōrero around the housing, I would have thought the question really is that's the question to ourselves. The question to ourselves as the Rangitikei District Council is to ask ourselves whether or not we want to be to step into the space and be a contributing partner along and contributing, and I'm talking about money. And I know that in the past we have definitely had conversation about this, but to me it comes down, we need to actually ask ourselves, is that an area that we're prepared to put money into, and is that an area that we think that our our ratepayers want us to go down, attract to go down, because in my mind, Jaime, the mahi that you're doing can't go necessarily a step further until we've made the decision as a council to say we are putting X amount of dollars, whatever amount of dollars, into this space, and then that's giving our absolute commitment into it around the housing. So that's just listening to Councillor Wilson and his corridor. Yeah, I think that Dave, you asked that question to me. That's on us as councillors to make that decision as to whether or not we're prepared to actually stump up some money and be part of a collaboration to start building homes. Have we got the appetite to do that? Yes or no? And you know, then we can go forward in that space. But there is a lot of things that are in here. I've worked, and I just wanted to say with another hat on that it's good to see the council being involved in a lot of things across the community, especially here in Taihape. So being able to read the report into the other areas that Jaime is getting getting into is great. So I just want to mihi to you for the work that you're continuing to do on our behalf. Kia ora.
Sure.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Jaime, for this amazing report. As you can see, I am on the Northern Steering Group Committee, and so I feel like I'm a step ahead of a number of people in understanding where this has been, and with Councillor Hero as well. I think one of the exciting things that is in here, and I want to ask Jaime a question around this, is the fact that the Door of Hope Trust has actually is drafting a submission, it says in 4.1.1, to the Community Housing Regulatory Authority, because that's such an important step, and I'd like to know where we're up to with that one, because that will also enable the Northern Steering Group as a subcommittee. So what I see is what the community development, economic development team has done here is it's facilitated in a year, less than a year really, the establishment of two fundamental groups that can be can then actually provide options for council going forward. So before we make decisions about whether we want to be in this space or not, what I hear is that we want to know that we can be part of this space effectively, and effectively across all sorts of ways, economically and actually spades and ground. And that's where this is where this is going. And also I see in the northern area, we've had lots of interesting conversations with various people who are really interested in facilitating and enabling their community through housing. So I also want to say that I've heard, and I heard it very strongly down in Blenheim with the Local Government New Zealand conference, that if Three Waters are taken away from councils, this housing space is somewhere that councils become very, very valuable. That's not mutually exclusive, but I did hear that quite strongly at that conference. So yes, so just one question for you, Jaime, if you could just clarify for me, where is the application or the submission to the CHRA at this stage with the Door of Hope Trust?
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. The Door of Hope Rangitikei Community Housing Trust has, as I said earlier, become a member of the Community Housing Aotearoa, and with that has now had access to mentoring and work that they're assisting the trust with to be able to develop the foundation documents that are going to be required that they have to attach with their application to the CHRA. The first major hurdle is the strategic plan, which they've written. They've gone through probably 6 or 7 drafts. It's now final. They're working on other procedures as we speak. They need a tenancy management plan, and some of these things are quite technical. So what they're going to be able to do through the CHA is to be able to access what other organizations have already done. Thankfully, they're not going to have to start from scratch. And with that, it's quite likely that they're probably less than a year away now from submitting their formal application and, all things being equal, being accepted as a community housing provider and receiving registration from the government. So I'm sorry, I didn't get a chance to answer your question concerning this, Dave, but truly, they're no more than a year away from opening up this possibility of funding if the current process continues as it has been.
Thank you. That's very exciting. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to know, is it, this might fall into the emergency housing category, but is it within the scope of this to address, for instance, families who have been rendered homeless overnight? We've got 2 households out at Marton that have burnt to the ground, and so quite large families in both households are now trying to figure out a way to rebuild. So does that fall within the scope of what you're...
What I'm working with these 2 organizations does not encompass what you just described. There are actually 2 different transition stages before you get to social housing, which is long-term rental subsidies. So it might be a family, as you described, that need housing but will remain in that house for a year minimum and quite possibly quite a bit more. But the 2 stages first are emergency housing, which by the government's definition is for a period of 7 days. So it's the immediate reaction when there is a dire situation. And so during that 7-day period, they're working with the emergency housing provider to then transition to what's called transitional housing. And that's over a 90-day period. A little bit longer term, a little bit more support, a little bit it enables families to start making plans and see where they're going to be headed. And then the next step in that process is social housing, which is a much longer term proposition. Realistically, these 2 organizations decided they don't have the skills to be able to work in the emergency housing or the transitional housing spaces because they require an enormous number of wraparound services, social counseling, all kinds of social support that they don't have the ability to provide. So.
Your Worship, you had a question?
Yeah, thank you, and I apologise that I had to step out and take a call at the start of the meeting. Outside of an LTP or annual plan, is there anything that we can do further to help them now? I mean, we've had discussions and in terms of major expenditure, we don't have an easy process. But is there anything that we can do further about intent or, what would you like council to do at the moment?
I'm going to have to think about that one, but where their real needs are is really mostly administrative at this point. There are people who will need to contribute time to be able to help them keep minutes, to be able to follow up on the various concerns that they have and the reporting needs. I think to a certain extent, what we're involved in is a process that involves both institutional strengthening of these nascent or startup organizations, but at the same time, the ability to build the capacity of the principals that are involved in managing these organizations. So they need to develop skills, and to some extent, that I would say is being provided by the community housing Aotearoa through their own internal training programs. Possibly in order to attend something, an intensive training program. These are 2 organizations that might benefit from a little bit of financial help, either for transport or for accommodation, if they have to go to Wellington, for example. Because although they do have some monies, those monies they've put toward very tangible things like buying a computer and paying for travel expenses and those sort of things. So any little bit of contribution on top of what they've already managed to raise, I'm sure would be very welcome.
Yeah, supplementary to that, the operational budgets within council direction, not ours.
Yes.
So that's a discussion with your superiors and through to Peter. I guess, and also included in that is the opportunity to apply for grants.
Yes.
We have some grants available through council. Unfortunately, the next one that's open now is the PEDS funding. But, you know, is that where we basically have to focus them in the short term to say, hey, this is how we help?
Sorry.
Yeah,
Can I
I
respond
understand
to
the
that?
difficulty.
And my response is that that would be terribly helpful. I'm sure they would be very grateful if they could receive some training, orientation, advice about how to develop and submit grant proposals.
Okay. Thank you.
Very good. I mean, I've got a question, quite big picture. You're the first person who we've had in-house in this role. Do you see, or as part of your report and part of your process that you work on, are you identifying any structural or even bylaw issues that effectively get in the way for people, or even for, not only for your role, but for people wanting to come into this district to start a project that aids in economic development? Are there things that we don't do well or we've never thought of doing? And are you identifying them? Because I guess it's key for building out processes in the future.
I appreciate the question, and I think that we have an amazing group of very talented people here in council. And I'm looking at one of them across the table from me here, who is managing the spatial plan. And what's coming out of these parallel processes is an identification of possibilities of how council can be of assistance to be able to make this process easier. Particularly, I'm thinking about the district plan and the size of the sections and the potential that could result if the district plan were modified. I think that there are very interesting topics for conversation that will come out of the work that Katrina is doing that possibly may lead to a way to make this process easier going forward for these organizations and to put a lot more people into warm, secure, safe housing.
Oh, that's great, thank you. Now look folks, we've been going for 2 hours. I think it'd be really nice if we signed off this. So I'll move from the chair that this report be received. I'd like a seconder, please. Thank you, Your Worship. As a favor, say aye. And against, carried. Now look, there's an undertaking there. It's up on the screen behind me. Your Worship, are you happy with what is in there? Because you were one of the instigators.
There's just social housing.
And is it all housing or just social?
I was seeing it as part of other aspects of the report as well, but that's probably a good place to be.
Okay.
I'm okay with that.
And
You need to repeat it for the online members.
oh, sorry, for the online folk, the undertaking is His Worship the Mayor.
Sorry, I just widened it out to housing without necessarily
social.
being social.
His Worship the Mayor and Councillor Gordon requested that staff arrange a workshop for elected members to focus on housing within the district. Left it nice and broad. And I'm getting some thumbs up. Thank you.
Yes.
Great. Okay, so look, we're going to take a break now for, what's it, 10? Yeah, let's say 10 minutes. So we'll be starting in at 3:15. Apologies for the start.
What were they close to what I put?
And
Right, as you go outside. Good luck. Oh.
So we're live again. Welcome back to those online. We're up to item 10.6, our youth development update. My machine decides to live again. So we're on page 168. So Kelly, welcome to the table.
Thank you.
The floor is yours.
Oh, thank you. I'm just happy to take my report as read and answer any questions that anyone might have.
Right. Who wants to be first? Who wants to be first out of the blocks? Your worship.
I'm just opening it up, but when I read the report, I think we have, was it 3 people expressing interest at this stage? What, is there an up-to-date figure on?
I think it was 5.
5.
Yeah.
Which item are you referring to, your worship?
This is, yeah. Applications for youth council. Yeah, 5, sorry, not 3. And that's the latest figure.
Yeah, and 2 of those are from Taihape.
We won't hold that against.
We don't know.
Great. Kath, you have a question.
Yeah, thanks. It's just in regards to the boxing that's being undertaken. And this is quite difficult for me given my own interest in boxing, but I'm wondering where our responsibilities and liabilities lie in regards to this, given a number of scientists are coming out suggesting boxing's banned for young people. Boxing, the very nature of it is all about the headshot and essentially causing injuries to the brain. I'm just wondering what we do to, well, protect the children and where our liabilities sit with that. Thank you.
Sure, through you. Thanks for the question, Kath. This was actually something that was quite a worry for a lot of people when we started looking at introducing boxing amongst the youth. So I'm not sure if you are aware, but this boxing program was born from a hui last year at this time, where a lot of community people had got together, police, Ngāti Apa, council, schools, and expressed a real concern around violence among youth. Oh, I forgot to breathe then, sorry. And so the police actually expressed the biggest concern in the boys between the ages of 13 and 16, because there was just nowhere to refer them to. There was nowhere for them to be pointed to get out their aggression, or nowhere for them to refer them to. So they were picking these boys up, unable to charge them with anything, unable to give them any consequences to their actions. Thank you. But one thing that they did talk to these boys about was asking them what they wanted to do. And all of them said they wanted to learn how to fight because they thought they were huge gangsters that could just go around the community beating people up, and they wanted to know how to do it better. And so that was, to me, an opportunity to be able to use that to turn around a mindset, and that's how this boxing program was created. I did a lot of research on boxing programs in New Zealand around the same age groups, particularly around kids that had already gone through the justice system for violence, for gang-related activity. And it was really came down to building resilience and self-discipline in youth, which is really, boxing is a really good way to do that, because you are challenged physically, not just to the point where you don't want to continue, but to the point where your body starts crumpling and, these boys don't want to go sometimes in the heat, or, so what we're teaching is resilience and self-discipline, which then encourages self-worth in our communities. So your question is, how are we protecting ourselves? What we've found so far is that we've had a lot of success in our boxing programs. We have very clear guidelines on what is and isn't acceptable within the class and then outside of their class as well. And we are very closely keeping an eye on police activity, school truancy. So it's a very collaborative effort. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Not if everybody believes that that's answered the question, then I'll leave it at that. But I do think, I don't think it actually answered it terribly clearly. We're talking about protecting young brains. 99% of injuries, brain injuries that happen during boxing are happening during the sparring, etc., which is, I'm guessing, my understanding of boxing, that's exactly what would be happening in these sessions. How are we ensuring that we're protecting these young people's brains, and how are we ensuring we're protecting us as a organisation that is delivering this function to the community and to these young boys? And I totally hear you. I totally hear you. I know, I've been a big fan of boxing for a long time, which is why I say this hurts me to even be saying this. But the reality is it causes injuries, and they're irreversible injuries. And I just feel... And like I said, I hear you. It gives an opportunity to create discipline and to release energy, etc. I just feel there may be other ways of possibly doing it, or ways of ensuring that we have covered all the bases. As far as our liability goes, maybe this is a question that needs to be posed to our CE. I'm not too sure, but I've put it out there. That's my serious concern, and I look forward to hearing the responses. Thank you.
Can I respond? Yes. Okay, sorry. I'm a bit more collected now. So we have a professional boxer who teaches this boxing class, Onyx Fly, alongside his dad, who are both very experienced in what is and isn't safe. So our kids, they don't spar straight away. A lot of our program is around fitness and discipline. But when they do spar, they're shoulder sparring, so they're not hitting each other in the head, but they still do wear protective gear. So they have quick wraps on their hands, they have gloves, they have headgear and mouth guards. So they're not allowed to spar without mouth guards. And they're constantly supervised. They're not allowed to spar without supervision, with Onyx being there alongside them. I do definitely hear your concerns around head injuries. And we are taking every reasonable precaution to make sure that no one is getting injured. Have all the safety gear, and yeah, like I say, there's an adult with them at all times.
Thank you, Kelly. Who else has a question? Nigel.
Thank you for the report, Kelly, and thanks for the explanation around the boxing. Looking at the numbers attending, it's a fantastic opportunity for our youth, so thank you. My question is around the Marton lobby, and there's a comment in there around the closure of the lobby because of its inability to exist in the current COVID restrictions. Is that a permanent closure that you're looking at, or is it just temporarily while the restrictions are in place that don't allow it to operate?
Through you. So we are looking at permanently closing the lobby. It has not been giving us the outcomes that we are wanting to see for the amount of output that we're giving it. So yeah, it's still, Nadia and I are still discussing what that looks like and where the investment could potentially go into the community better. But yes, it would be a permanent closure.
And supplementary to that, are we still currently paying a lease for that building through that period, or for that room during that period?
We are.
Thank you.
Some more questions?
I have a question.
We've got Councillor Dalgety and then you, Jill.
Thanks.
Thank you, Kelly,
Tracy.
for your report. Look, I really enjoyed seeing the youth contribution to the destination management plan, or the beginnings of that.
Mm-hmm.
And this might be a question to Nadia before she gets out the door. Do you think youth are having enough of a input to council discussion or council influence around the table? I mean, I love the concept of the youth council and how it gets, and it has got a number of people chasing this sort of line of work, or going into university and studying politics. Yeah, so I'm just wondering, but yeah, at most of our meetings, how much are they influencing, are they having an input into getting a say?
Through you, Mr. Chair, if I can clarify your question, Councillor Dalgety, you were talking around some of the decision making that council makes.
Yeah, are we really getting a youth voice at our council?
Probably not, if I was to be quite honest. Kelly and I do look at the council order papers and consider what may be of interest to youth. There may be, I'm just trying to think off the cuff here, if there's another way in which we could do that doesn't impact on the youth themselves. So, you know, in terms of maybe having one of the youth delegates at the council meetings more often. However, that does cut into their school time. So we've got to do that with a little bit of caution. It's that fine line between what's of interest to youth that they might want to have input in versus perhaps what councillors might want to hear in return. And that's definitely something we can explore further, perhaps into next year with the new youth council, how the elected member support could contribute to that.
Thank you.
Nadia, if there was something that they felt was vitally important that we as adults weren't recognising, how would you bring that to us?
I'll take that. Yes. We've been through.
Can I comment on this?
Sure.
So there have been subjects that have come up with the Youth Council where there have been in-depth discussions, for instance, about things like Maori warts. So those discussions are quite free and frank, and they express their views. They listen to the arguments and so on. So I could think of other subjects like that have come up with Youth Council. There are some things that, just trying to think of the best example, but there are 2 or 3 Youth Council members that are incredibly politically astute and literally research well, and you know, they will push me on on aspects that are going in front of New Zealand government, etc. So yeah, I think it actually works reasonably well.
So in terms of their voice, who's the affected delegate within the elected members? Does it fall to its worship?
I attend most of their meetings, yes. But also Councillor Ash has been involved with some of the meetings and their AGMs in past things. Fee, you've went to.
Yeah, I've just attended.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's official capacity. Yeah.
Thank you. Look, we've got a couple of people online. Jill, followed by Tracy.
Thank you. To follow on from that conversation, although that's not my full question, when I went along to those youth meetings, they have the capacity to make resolutions. and we do get the Youth Council paper come to us within our reports from boards, I believe. So that is a direct contact that we have with them. However, what I wanted to talk about was, and thank you so much for this report, the Taihape lobby, having had a makeover with this is great. I haven't actually had a look myself, but look forward to it. Before Mokai Pātea Services ran this a couple of hours at the end of most days, and correct me if I'm wrong, but now I see here that it's actually council staff. Is that Danae Ciacia? So basically, council have taken on that role of being the facilitators of that facility. Is that right?
Through you, Mr. Chair, in a roundabout way, Councillor Duncan. So that space is now occupied by our northern branch of the Mahitahi Rangatike Employment Programme. That is a contracted service that we have to deliver that, although in saying that, it's a very close relationship that we have with James Towers and his team. And it's his team that are in there doing both of those roles. One, the employment program, and two, managing the after school hours of the youth space.
Thank you.
Tracy? You're still on mute, Tracy.
Kia ora. I just need to get back to the right page. So under on page 169, on page 169, 4.1, you've got in there that council staff continue to liaise with Te Runanga o Ngā Wairuki, Ngāti Apa, Te Oranganui, MOE, Oranga Tamariki, and various other agencies building a framework to address gap areas and services for rangitika youth. We're in there, considering that the first two of those organisations you've said are iwi providers, I'd like to know where and if Mokai Pātea Services with a part of that. And I know that I sit on two hats here, but I'd just like to know what the feedback from that question is.
Thanks, through you, Chair. Thanks for your question, Tracy. Absolutely. I just haven't made it to you yet.
Just to say that Te Oranganui is an organisation that's based out of Whanganui, and considering you're talking about rangitika youth, I'm wondering what the connection is with that. That's just my question to ask. If you're talking rangitika youth, that is kids that go to the schools within our district, not within the Whanganui district. So if I'd just like to put that clearly put that into that space. Kia ora.
Can I respond? Sure. So to clarify, Tracy, Te Oranganui came and did a workshop at Ngāti Apa, and they were doing a workshop around the gaps in services in the rangatike, and talking to us about what they did to address those gaps in Whanganui. So Ngāti Apa and myself and several other agencies from around the district attended that meeting, and Ngāti Apa are currently building their own framework based from what they learnt during that meeting. So it wasn't that Te Oranganui was invading our zone or anything like that. It was just that that's where the start of the meetings began, was through their agency, which was really valuable to learn how they've done things so that we can also do things in a way that are going to do the best for our youth.
Kia ora.
Right, have we got further questions for Kelly? You got any other comments, Kelly, you'd like to make on the report?
Probably not.
Well done. Look.
Good enough.
Can I make one comment?
Yes.
I can do this with youth, no problem. And this is terrifying.
Oh,
Done well.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
perhaps we came along in our sweatshirts and old track pants and beards.
Maybe. Maybe it's the suits.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Look, thank you, Kelly. Now, look, would someone like to move? I'm trying to find the right page. Here we go. Did the report be received? Thank you, Nigel. Thank you, Fee. Those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Those. Right. So that is the end of the official order paper, but I do have one late item actually, and that's for Nadia. Nadia, I understand that this is probably going to be your last meeting that you attend for policy and planning. It came as a real shock to me because I suppose up in the north I'm a little bit out of some of the loops. So look, thank you for all the work you've done here in support of this committee and all the spaces that you operate in. Your passion is going to be really missed, and I'd say, you know, for Peter, wow, what big shoes to fill. So well done. Thank you for your time here, and someone else's gain is our loss. But look, you can always come back.
Thank you for that, and also with my heart on my sleeve. Thank you to the councillors as well. It's very easy engaging with you all. You are all incredibly passionate and do the district proud. So it's been an honour. Thank you.
Well,
Can I just add to this a little bit? It's not only council that is losing a staff member. Nadia's role within the community. Remember, she came to this community and the first thing she did was look to volunteer within Project Marton. That sort of commitment to our community has continued, and you know, things like Rotary and so on, I have pointed out to Rotary that they didn't have to accept her resignation, that it's only about a 3.5 hour commute. We have people that live in Bulls, so there's no reason why she couldn't go down. There will be, I'm sure down the track, and I know there will be a farewell from staff, but it is a time for the governors to say, you know, a job well done, and we wish you absolutely all the best. You did right. It's their gain and our loss. But it's the right thing for you, and I know it's near a family and all of those things. So you go with our absolute blessings, and I dare say you'll keep in touch with a number of us. So thank you very much.
Now, one other last thing, and I forgot to include this. Kath and Jill, you had a question about the spike in web views on November 29th, and that was all around the COVID update. Right. Unless are there any items for our next following meeting, which will be in February, if you could please just contact either myself or staff. And without any further ado, I'll declare the meeting closed at 3:39 p.m. Thank you for your attendance, both elected members and staff.